I want to welcome you to this live stream by JTech Medical. My name is Jeremy and I'll be hosting us today as we go through some of the changes and updates that JTech has made to some of our newer software products. We are looking right now at the Northstar software. This is the newest version of JTech's flagship physical assessment software, and we're going to go over some of the changes and some of the improvements that we've been making with user feedback. For those of you who might be watching this who are not familiar with JTech's previous products, that's okay. We're going to be going through essentially a typical session of using the software and making sure that everybody feels comfortable with the general navigation and use as well. And as we go, we're going to be hitting some of those high points and making sure that you have a pretty good idea of what we've been working on and why Northstar would be a good fit for you. I want to talk a little bit briefly about the Northstar software and JTech's production process in general. The tracker software had been updated and made with the feedback of over the 15 years that it's been in service, and we've carried that over along with more into the Northstar framework as well. For those of you who are familiar with some of that previous software, of course, you won't have to relearn a whole lot at all. We've tried to maintain what was good in some of our previous software products and to simply improve upon that where requested and based on, again, that user feedback. Menus in this case have been rearranged. So in some of our previous software, you might know that when you open the program, there wasn't much to look at. But here in Northstar, we've tried to highlight our main functions right here on the main screen. And we're going to talk just a little bit about those just to begin with. So the first thing, databases. Database management isn't something that you'll be typically using during the course of a day-to-day session, but I do want to mention that JTech has implemented a new database format. We now use Microsoft SQL, the SQL format, which is sort of a back-end technology that makes the program more modern and stable for all of our users. But for those of you who are at larger institutions, for our enterprise users at hospitals and universities, we do, through SQL, allow user management, security, auditing, all of those things. Active Directory support also is included in Northstar for that back-end administrative stuff to be handled. We also have some of our own security components that are built in, but that SQL database is a big deal and makes sure that the software is resilient technology-wise and also flexible for those needs. So again, probably not something that'll reach out and grab you day to day, but we do like to make sure that you know that we have some of those technology considerations in mind as we develop the program. Also things like settings, we're not going to be going into that too much today, but lots of things that can be changed in the background, configuring instruments, software behavior, voice prompts, things like that, male and female voice prompts, changing some of those things. Customizations also can be handled through the settings menu. So there's been attention to a lot of sections of the program, but we're going to try and stick to the stuff that happens during normal day-to-day use. I'm going to go ahead and click on the patient files section of the software, and I do have a couple of patients that I've pre-prepared here. I kind of wanted to show you that some things have really been streamlined here. So one of the things that we would hear from folks is that over the course of time, testing a lot of people, you would actually find that your patient records would end up being a little bit cluttered and have people that you haven't seen for months or years. And we do now have the ability to toggle back and forth between recent patient records and all patient records. Recent is there by default, but if you'd like to see the entire list, you can do that as well. You can also search by anything that, for example, searching by the name John Q. Public will bring up an individual person, and we assume that for the most part, searching is probably going to be the best way to find those records. But generally speaking, we wanted to make it easier rather than having one gigantic list as in some of our previous software products. We wanted to make it a little bit easier to search and find those people and to manage the sort of usability of that list of patients. So I'm going to go ahead and select John Q. Public, who is already on file here, and I wanted to show you one other thing. When we look at that record, either when we're creating a record or when we're going in to make changes, intake information used to be something that was handled in the exam level. You would actually have to select the patient, create a new exam date, and then handle intake or updates on things like complaints further inside the software. And we heard from folks that that was something that would just take a little bit too much time. So intake information now is part of the basic patient record. So in addition to the name and the patient ID numbers and birth dates and gender and handedness and those things, things like the patient's personal background can be found here, medical history, anything pertaining to the patient's injury or case, family history, and then I mentioned a little bit earlier complaints. So for example, this patient presented with low back pain or had a low back pain complaint, and this includes things like the qualitative descriptions. It's an aching low back pain, what makes it worse, reaching, what makes it better, prescription medications. But inside here, on an ongoing basis, we can also add items here for new history. So for example, we can indicate, in a week, this patient reports that the symptoms are much improved, the severity of the symptoms is only mild, the frequency is only occasional, the duration is only for a few minutes, and the interference with activities of daily living is not really at all. That used to be material that had to be entered in further on in the software, but just in general, including things like employment, and in other cases, you would actually have to dig deeper into the record in order to document those. So we heard from people that they wanted to be able to do that a little bit more easily, so we've actually made that just part of the patient record itself. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I want to show you that the next change that we've made as far as organization of the record, in some of our products, like our previous tracker software, we actually had 3 levels of information: the patient, and then there was a requirement to indicate a case file or an injury, or you might think of it as a, the record of that particular ongoing treatment or case. But now we've sort of done away with that, and the visit level itself actually allows you to handle that. So, for example, when we add a new visit, we can still name it and call it the initial or the follow-up or what have you. And the visit itself can be tagged with a case. So if you want to associate this with a particular injury or re-injury, the case is the way that that can be done. And so, for example, if this patient had originally a spine injury, but let's say now there is a new case to add, maybe something unrelated to the first one. Maybe they're here for a hand injury, for example. And the case file allows you to tag in there people like the care providers, insurance companies, referral sources, attorneys, things like that, and they will be associated with that, so that now the patient has on file 2 different items, a spine injury and a hand injury. And that information is optional. You can actually leave it so it's not tagged at all, so that all new exam dates are simply added and aggregated together. And this stuff can also be changed on the fly later on as well, where if you need to start tagging a case after the fact, that can actually be modified, where before it was locked in the software. So case files now are tagged onto the visit rather than being a required element of the basic record itself. So I've got my patient, I've got my visit, and we're going to go ahead and move along to the perform exam section of the software, the testing area of the software. So we actually have a previous test sequence that had been loaded for this patient prior, and if you'd like, you can always load in your own test sequences, the same as we ever did before, but the program is going to recall what was tested for this person the last time they were here. Another change, since we're on this screen, you'll sort of notice that we've maintained the same format. The right-hand side has sort of the main sections: physical and neurological assessments, instruments, functional testing, hand evaluations for those of you in the hand market. Quick screen used to be its own separate item, but now we've folded that into the exam area so that it makes a little bit more sense and is easier to maintain and manage. But items that are that you need to choose from, we've still kind of maintained the idea that on the right-hand side you simply check boxes for different things, and the left-hand side, the test sequence queue, will accept those and will sort of aggregate them. That, we heard from people, was very usable, made a lot of sense to them, so we've sort of maintained that and stuck with that. The right-hand side, though, over here, we also have broken out all of our questionnaires. It used to be that questionnaire scoring was handled in a separate screen where all of the questionnaires were kind of lumped in together, but now we've broken those out to make it a little bit easier to choose the things that you are actually interested in, and you can manage those separately rather than having to navigate a whole different interface for questionnaires. I'm going to go ahead and skip back out here to our instrumented section, and the same as we've used in our previous software, all of our instruments are represented here by the icons for inclinometry, muscle strength testing, algometry, and so on. And we can click on these. Since we already have some INC tests selected, all of those inclinometer tests, you can see that the spine already has some items added in here, and this simply reflects what's already been selected, but we can make changes if we want to. You know, if we're not going to do a lateral test or what have you, we can make those changes here. We can also add new items if we wish, and they'll be added to the bottom of the queue. We can still drag those around and add them wherever we want, if we want them to be after the muscle testing, for example. And then, of course, you can save the test sequences here or recall them by clicking on the icons that look like arrows either going into capsules or that are coming up out of the capsules. Same as before. So we try and make it easy for you to standardize the testing that you are going to be doing. And then when we hit the play button,
inclinometry, cervical flexion extension, neutral.
We're going to get our voice prompts. The software is going to prompt us not only to turn on our instruments, so I've got a couple of inclinometers here, and I'm going to go ahead and power those on. The layout for testing, really, we've sort of kept that the same as we had it before in some of our previous software products as well. So the upper right-hand corner, we can actually see the values from the devices real time. If I pick up my inclinometers and move them around, we actually see some numbers coming from the tools. The diagram here on the kind of middle right, over on the left-hand side, the individual max values for each of those repetitions, history, and calculated results. Those of you who've used some of our previous software products, you'll feel right at home here because those are essentially the same as they ever were. The layout was something that we heard from people that they really appreciated and liked. We're going to take a look, though, at one big change that we've made in the software, which is with our help icon. When you click on this little video camera, one of the things that we heard from people was that the videos were actually very helpful for instructing and informing patients about the testing to be done. So we've actually redone all of the videos and audio.
Seated upright with head in neutral, place secondary over T1 and move it slightly to the side. In sagittal plane, place primary anywhere on head and press enter to 0. According to motion default selected, flex or extend cervical spine and press enter to record angle. Move to opposite position and press enter to record angle. Continue for the required number of repetitions.
All right. So we've made sure that not only does the video give the basic instructions, but we've also made sure to sort of highlight some of the fundamentals here about identifying landmarks and verifying neutral positions, anatomic neutral positions. We also have over here on the left-hand side a written transcription of the information as well. And, of course, we've still got alternate testing videos for different positions or different conditions. And all of the videos in the software have been redone in that way. And we'll take a look at some of those in just a moment as well. We're going to go ahead and go through the testing just like we saw in the video, placing the inclinometers on the patient and recording the anatomic neutral position.
Flexion.
And we'll have the patient bend forward all the way. And
extension.
Then tilt backward. And then
flexion.
Forward. And so on.
Extension. Flexion. Extension. Flexion. Extension. Flexion. Extension. Incline. Cervical rotation.
Once the
neutral.
test has been completed, the software is set to automatically advance. That can also be disabled so that you can have an opportunity to review your test results. But we heard from folks that they really like the option of moving forward through testing. Here we now are at the cervical rotation test. Again, the layout of the test is basically the same as the previous one. And let's take a look at the video for this one as well for just a moment.
Subject is supine on table with head in neutral. Using only primary,
So here,
place it on
verifying through
forehead
the tips of
parallel
the
to
ears,
transverse plane
the
and press
neutral
enter.
position.
For left rotation, rotate head towards left shoulder and press enter to record angle. For right rotation, rotate head towards right shoulder and press enter to record angle. Continue for the required number of repetitions.
All right, and so in that video, of course, we highlight the fundamental necessity of making sure that both the placement and the facing of the inclinometers is handled correctly. This test, of course, handled in the supine position with the patient facing upward in order to accommodate inclinometry tilting left and right, as you saw. And this test uses only a single inclinometer, so we're going to go ahead and proceed through the test as we normally would, left and right.
Left side. Right side. Left side. Right side. Left side. Right side. Inclinometer. Lumbar flexion extension.
So,
Neutral.
of course, the software will prompt us for new devices. It had disabled the primary while we did that single inclinometer test, so we simply turn the other one back on, and we would proceed through the tests like we normally would. I'd like to highlight a couple of things at this point. So we're going to skip down to a muscle strength test, but a couple of things that I want to highlight here.
Shoulder flexion. Left side.
The program is going to ask us
Rep
to activate the new tool, the muscle strength tester, and you can now see up in the top right-hand corner the value from the instruments. But I also want to point out something that we have changed in Northstar here, which is that most of the functions typically for objective measurements, for physical assessments, focused on the tools. However, one large segment of our market included functional testing. So this is occupational medicine, industrial medicine, things where you're really trying to observe function, but also document things like high effort behaviors or painful responses. I want to draw your attention to the left-hand side where we have a couple of icons here for observations, the eyeball, and then we also have an images with the little camera. And we heard from folks that they did not only want to document that stuff in the functional areas of the software, dynamic lifting and pushing, pulling, and other industrial functional scenarios, but also in the objective measurements as well. They wanted to be able to document pain. Now, we do, of course, have the ability down here in the bottom right to document notations and things like that, but if we click on the observations icon here, it actually pulls up a new screen that specifically is tied to the test that we're doing, so shoulder flexion observations. This allows us the ability to document pain before test, pain after test, pain during test, and so on. We can also document pain in different regions of the body, such as facial, grimacing, wincing, sighing, etc., rubbing the neck, rolling the neck, things like that. In the case of upper extremity, since we're in the shoulder, we could say, well, they're rubbing their shoulder, maybe shrugging them, trying to shake them out a little bit. So those items can be documented here, and the software is going to keep track of both the painful behaviors, but also things like high effort behaviors. You know, for example, requesting more practice, requesting to repeat the test, or, for example, if we, up in the right-hand corner, we have an icon that looks like building blocks. We could make a change to our high-effort behaviors and say, well, for one of our high-effort behaviors, the patient indicated verbally expressed competitiveness. Something like that, like, oh, they wanted to really do a lot better, and you can see that it adds it down here at the bottom. So if any of the observations regarding either pain, high effort behaviors, range of motion, lifting strategies, movements, and biomechanics, all of those things used to be locked behind the idea of functional testing. Now they are available for all objective testing as well, and the software will keep track of that, and we'll see this in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and save my observations, and I'm going to mention here also for images. We used to allow images only for functional testing, but again, users indicated that having the ability to show photographs of people performing the testing could be helpful in certain scenarios as well. So, for example, we can add a we can add an item here and maybe look for some photos. And I don't know if I've got any really suitable photos for our demo. Oh, there's a handsome young man. We'll go ahead and throw that there. Don't know who that could be. I'm going to go ahead and save our shoulder flexion image, ostensibly. That's a shoulder flexion image. And that will now be stored in the software, and it will show up on our reports as well. We're going to go ahead and take one quick look at the video for shoulder flexion, just again to give you an idea of the change in the video.
Subject is seated with shoulder flexed 90 degrees and elbow straight. Stabilize shoulder and place transducer proximal to elbow joint on lateral surface of upper arm. Provide isometric resistance while subject attempts to flex shoulder. Tell subject to push, 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 relax.
And so once again, fairly straightforward video, but it takes up the whole screen again, just with the idea that a patient may need to see it. And you know, the videos that we had before were much smaller and a little bit harder to discern. So we've made it now something that could be used as a tool for patients a little bit better. So the muscle strength tester now awaiting input. We're going to go ahead and push, 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 relax.
Left side, rep 2.
Push, 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 relax.
Left side.
Once again,
rep 3.
push, 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 and relax.
Right side.
Okay.
Rep 1.
Moving over to the right side, we'll apply the muscle tester and push, 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 and relax.
Right side.
And once again, push,
rep 2.
push, push, and relax.
Right side.
Push,
rep 3.
push, push, and relax. And the software will quantify, again, the max values. We can actually see the peak for each one of these. Repetition 1 in green, repetition 2 in red, repetition 3 in blue. And we can see down at the bottom the calculated results, including things like percentage differences of the maxes on either side. So we actually have a fairly significant right side deficit of about 30%. If we wanted to see this rather in kilograms, we can set it to pounds, for example. All of the conversions happen real time, so you can simply toggle those and the software will keep track of them. So generally speaking, testing follows the same style and format and the same guidelines and the same practices that have been in previous software. Range of motion and strength testing and physical assessment hasn't really changed drastically since you've used JTech products in the past, so we've of course kept what is still working. So we're going to break out of this, and if we want to see the results, so here we have the range of motion values for the cervical spine, flexion extension, left and right rotation, and we can also go take a look at our muscle strength testing, and here we have our shoulder flexion and shoulder extension. We're still able to do notes and comments. Also, in the observations area, we actually have a functional test assistant, which will allow you to document things like heart rate and some other things as well. So that, again, used to be the domain solely of functional testing, but it's now been brought over into objective physical performance testing, since that's what users have asked for. Now, if we want to come back and take a look at some of the results in a little bit broader or more general sense, up across the top we have an analysis button, the graphs up here, the 3D pie chart. We're going to go ahead and click on that. And we have here a listing for all of our various tests. So we're currently under the test results section for things like inclinometry. What are our results today? Well, we can see in a little more detail. We can see not only the max value, the normal value, the delta, the change between the max and the normal value. And we have a 14% deficit here, but we can also take a look at the specific repetitions. So in this case, we actually had to perform 5 bilateral repetitions. It turns out the first 3 in bold here were used to determine consistency for the cervical flexion, but rep 3, 4, and 5 were used for cervical extension. Down below we have here the left and right rotation. So whereas these opposing motions are sort of indicated by a graph that goes both up and down from 0, for our cervical rotation we have a left and right side here that you can kind of see those individually, and again 1, 2, 3 for both, and turns out that those are looking pretty good. We actually have the ability to do test history, and so for example we can look at something like muscle strength testing, and I think we did some upper extremity, maybe some neck. Let's take a look at inclinometry here for a second. So for inclinometry, it looks like we've only got the one. So if we had done more testing on those, of course, we would actually see the graphs. And here for the history area specifically, you can actually change the framing of the test. If you want to see, for example, a specific historical period, you want to take a look at the last few weeks compared to maybe changing the treatment plan and seeing how effective those things were. That can all be done here as well. In the summary section, and this is an area of the software that is sort of optional depending on what features you're interested in Northstar. We actually have things like the ability to go back and take a look at the reliability of symptoms. So anywhere that we saw things that we indicated, like shrugging shoulders, rubbing their shoulder in the shoulder flexion test, we can see those here. Reliability of effort allows us to document things like the verbally expressing competitiveness. The software does keep track of all of that, and you have the ability to indicate other things here. Some of this will be more familiar to some of our functional users, but bear in mind that some of that stuff could be used for objective physical performance tests as well. I want to take a look real briefly at the reporting area of the software. This is another area of Northstar that has undergone some fairly significant changes, and you can see already we have a different layout than some of our past software products. One of the big changes here is the option for a narrative express. So all of the reports now are formatted in kind of that narrative style, since we heard by and large from people that that's what they wanted to use. But we also have the ability to show some very specific tabulated details. We're going to take a look at report option A here in just a minute. We sort of refer to that as our smart report. I want to show you, though, that another item that's changed is that we do have the ability to use rich text. That's your Microsoft Word or your word processing file. We also have the ability to do PDFs. So where before you would have to use a separate converter for that, PDF is now supported natively in Northstar, so that you can attach that to emails, attach it to EMRs, and not have to worry about them being modified or changed. But I'd like to go ahead and hit report option A. And we're going to go ahead and save a test report here, save over the one that we've already got. And I'm going to switch over to our PDF viewer. So you can see that that report kind of gets updated down there at the bottom. Let me just switch over to our PDF viewer here for just a moment. And we're going to broaden that out. And we're going to take just a quick look. In fact, let's make this full screen so we can kind of see what's going on here. We're going to take a look at the main page here. And we're going to see here that we've got our patient, John Q. Public, and any of the information that we had recorded earlier in the software. So this includes things like the complaints that we had talked about, the history that all came from the intake area, all under the patient record area, anything about employment, the visits, and then here we actually have information about our reliability of effort. So here's our verbal expression of competitiveness, for example. We have an objective indicator of effort for coefficient of variation, symptom reports, so this is our shrugging shoulders and rubbing shoulders, indicators of pain. Boilerplate text for statements of medical necessity is provided here as well. And then we eventually get down into our objective data. So this is another thing that's changed in Northstar, the ability to have a little more control over the degree of specificity of data. So we hear from some users that summary is just what they need, or summary is not enough and they need all the details. We hear from other people that details is too detailed and they'd rather have something a little briefer. We give you the ability now to choose that. In our smart report, it'll actually do both. So you actually do get the summary, the breakdown, for example, of what are the normal values for each of these tests, what is the calculated result as well. So these are the max values, and then what is the difference of our results to what is normal. One new thing in Northstar is that we've tried to start using some color coding to a little bit better effect, so that it's easy to indicate what things might be problem areas that need to be worked on. So here we have the differences, which are all negative except for our cervical rotation right. We got a little bit above. Everything else is below normal. And then did it meet the AMA's validity criteria? Looks like it did. We then have our details here. So a little bit of information broken down about the details. And specifically what we're looking at is this. So we can actually see all of our repetitions. So we can kind of see across the top here, repetition 1, 2, and 3 for our flexion, repetition 3, 4, and 5 were used for extension, and then of course we can still see the difference from normal and so on. And then we have a graph that shows the spread of that data over time for both the flexion and the extension. So you can actually see a little bit more visually the degree of consistency of that data. And of course we'll see the same thing a little bit further down for our rotation test. And we'll still give you the ability to show things like your references. The muscle testing section, since we did muscle testing, we have our summary of data. So those are our max results here, the 27.5 and 19.3. Remember, we talked a little bit earlier about the 30% significant difference. Again, that's going to be reported with a red highlight. And then we can see the details a little bit further down. So this is going to be things like all of the repetitions, all of the line graphs, all of those things as well. A little bit below that, we have our observations for our shrugging and rubbing shoulders, expressing competitiveness for high effort, and then any images that we took. Yep, sure enough, there he is, doing that muscle test, looking quite dapper, if I say so myself. We also have references, again, for muscle strength testing. We'll also show you things like your instrument calibration and give a place for the evaluator to sign. We're going to go ahead and switch back to our Northstar software for just a moment to show the couple of other things, the different report options. And let's resize our screen here. So we can kind of see what's going on. There we go. And we're going to take a look at report option B. So report option B allows some customizations. For example, if we've got it highlighted right now to do the summary only, we have below that the details and history. So we could say, well, maybe I want the details and not the summary. Maybe I don't need those references. The people I'm sending it to already know. And then when you click on report option B, it will allow you to generate a modified version of the report with some of those broad changes. Report option C, again using the same format as the first two, is a lot like what we've used in some of our previous software. So Tracker required you to build these custom templates, and we found that we didn't want to get rid of that idea entirely for those people who wanted to really customize their reports. Report option C is now what we refer to as the narrative expert. So if we click on the button to open the narrative expert, we can see that we have a whole set of items here on the left-hand side that we can then choose to use on the right-hand side. So if we clear this out for just a moment, we can include things like our patient information, a banner, the patient details. We can even go in here and say, well, we want the basic information, we want the, let's say, the complaints information as well, and further down, maybe we do want that statement of medical necessity, and maybe we want to see muscle testing first, maybe with a banner and some summary. Maybe we only want the summary. But for range of motion, which maybe we want to come next, maybe we'll include the details for that as well. If you want to show historical data, there's a check mark for that. And basically, you can build this report out of any of the components that you wish. So if we create this report once again, and we'll save over that, and we're going to switch it over to our PDF viewer, because I'm generating it as an Adobe Acrobat PDF file. Again, we'll kind of increase the size in this so we can see what's going on. And again, we have everything in the order that I've chosen with the elements that we wanted to see. So muscle strength testing, summary, inclinometry data, and then further on down we have anything else that we want to show in those reports. So that information is, you can reconfigure it, change it, make new custom templates as well, and essentially just set that report up so that very easily in the future you can regenerate those reports in a way that you see fit. So we're going to go ahead and switch back to our Northstar program, and we'll make it a little bit easier to see here once again. There we go. And basically that more or less comprises the basics of the use of the Northstar software, as well as a quick summary of some of the changes. I'm going to return back to the home screen. And I want to invite you, if you're watching this video, that if you have an existing JTech software product that you'd like to consider upgrading, if you are new to JTech and would like to add functionality for objective or functional testing to your facility, hopefully we've given you a pretty good idea of what you can do with Northstar. I'd invite you to get in touch with JTech. We can be reached by phone at 1-800-985-8324. You can find us at jtechmedical.com by clicking the chat widget or sending us an email. We'd love to talk to you about how Northstar can be a good fit for you. If you're using existing JTech hardware, be aware that Tracker Freedom wireless products will work with Northstar. We do have a number of improvements available for hardware tools. We now have a newer wireless product called Echo, which has a smaller, more ergonomic form factor, more robust and modern wireless technology, and a few cool diagnostics to make sure that things run smoothly for you. And of course, we're happy to help tell you all about those things. And remember that any purchase of JTech software products or upgrades does include support service to learn and receive training on the use of these. Customer service is available to walk through any of this with you through cool little tools like we're doing our webinar today, and we also have a lot of resources to bring to bear to make sure that things are done smoothly for you. So again, thank you very much for joining our session today. Reach out to us at JTech Medical, and we look forward to speaking with you soon. Have a great day.